Perfect. So, very good day, everyone, and welcome to another interesting episode of our live stream program. Today, we will be covering a very trending topic in the US immigration world, and that would be the effect of recent asylum changes on the refugee protection, with a focus on the US Canadian border. My name is Paul, and I will be your host for today's session. When we talk about the landscape of asylum and refugee protection that has been undergoing significant shifts in the recent times, today we will actually delve into these particular changes, how these implications for these seeking refuge, and specifically how these changes impact those at the US Canadian border. And I have the privilege to be joined by a renowned and successful immigration attorney of, almost like 15 years of our experience, and more than that, who specializes in providing personalized and effective immigration representation for both businesses as well as individuals. Let's welcome on board attorney Leslie Kirby, who has a deep commitment to immigration law. She brings in her expertise from experience at one of the nation's largest immigration law firms. And there has been a personal journey. So if we talk about that, she would be the one who would be more, on the right and the brighter side to go ahead and introduce herself. But to be very honest with you, all we know is that she has been an immigrant herself. She has seen how it feels like, what it feels like, and that's the reason her help and her resistance is much more personalized. So let's welcome her. And so, Miss, Attorney Kirby. So how things are going on?
Doing well, Paul. Thank you very much for the introduction.
Most welcome, ma'am. So how are things been changing? What are the drastic changes coming in? A, br- if a brief introduction.
Right. Well, there have been, it's been very busy, a very busy summer on the asylum front. It seems like a never ending topic and, constant changes. Most recently, we learned that there were changes implemented at the U.S. Canadian border, as you mentioned. And this is because of the increase in the number of unauthorized crossings between the two countries. And so we have on August 14th, just recently, there were two key changes that went into effect. One of those changes is that when somebody is claiming asylum at the U.S. border or vice versa, or Canadian border, you have some procedural safeguards. You can ask for a lawyer. And it used to be the case that it used to be, a 24-hour period in which you, as the applicant, had the opportunity, the right to consult a lawyer. Which is key, right? I mean, sometimes, at least I can't speak to Canadian asylum law, but I can tell you U.S. Asylum law is incredibly complex. And so having the guidance of a lawyer is key in many of these cases. And so one of the policy changes is that an applicant now has 4 hours to consult a lawyer. And so if they don't have a legal representative, are not able to secure a legal representative within that 4-hour period, then they lose that right. So we did see a decrease from a 24-hour period to consult a lawyer to a 4-hour period. The other change that went into effect is the evidence that the person has to present. It's whatever they have available with them at the time that they make the claim will be the evidence that the officer will consider. Whereas in the past, people were given an opportunity to gather additional evidence to support their claim. So these are two legal safeguards that, for people in a seeking asylum, have been diminished, and so could be significant for that group of people.
Perfect. Uh, Key essentials, I would say.
I'm sorry, Paul. Repeat that.
Key essentials. They would be the key essentials to go ahead with, to begin with, for your
Uh,
procedures.
for applying for asylum.
Yes.
So be ready to articulate. So whenever somebody is applying for asylum, you have a very narrow period to present your claim. And so there are various avenues bases that qualify for asylum. So it's a persecution-based remedy. So it's persecution based on sex, persecution based on race, religion, right? If you're part of a particular social group, political opinion. So you do have to make sure that you understand that your claim has to fit within one of those spaces. The other thing is you have to have evidence. I mean, obviously, depending on the situation, sometimes people flee their country without having evidence. But for example, many of these claims rely on the law enforcement in their country, right? Governments in their country are not protecting them. So then, usually that uh, at least adjudicators here in the United States, they put a lot of weight on police reports. So if you are, being harmed in your home country and you go to the police and you make a report and nothing is done about it, but you still have a copy of that report, that has a lot of weight in your claim. Letters from people who know about your harm, right? So those are also credible pieces of information. Newspaper clips. So if you're in your home country, you're being persecuted because of your political opinion, then newspaper clippings supporting that are helpful. So those are the types of evidence that we see. I mean, of course, if if there is more time to prepare a case, there is more evidence that typically goes into an asylum claim. But if you are somebody at the border who has a very short period of time to present your claim, I would say those are the essentials that one should be mindful of.
Makes sense. Perfect. Now, to begin with the core questions, I would like to, have a quick note on the logistics. So this live stream is being recorded, and we will be live for listening on Spotify. So simply search "Borderless Talk" by immigrationquestion.com and listen to today's session and the previous ones on the go. We also encourage you to submit your questions through the chat box, the feature from the social media platforms you are streaming from, and we will address them during the dedicated Q&A session at the end. Perfect. So, Attorney Leslie, the first question, which would be, the very basics, the very bookish thing that I would like to ask you is when we talk about, like U.S. immigration law. So, in that particular context, what is, the review that goes ahead with asylum and refugee protection? What's that particular, the basic policy that comes in, or maybe the thought process behind it?
Okay. So like how somebody applies for asylum, or how is that what you mean?
For example, like when we talk, because see, immigration for every country, it's the procedure, it's different, the thought process is different, policies accordingly are being conveyed by the government as well, right? So what kind of like when we say if you could just review what asylum and refugee protection mean in the context of U.S. immigration law specifically.
Okay, what it means is that the United States, it's a humanitarian-based relief. So is
Mhm.
it's based on harm, it's based on persecution. So there is a harm in the person's home country, and the person is coming to this country for refuge. So if you're coming from your home country, uh, if you're sustaining a harm in your home country, and you're applying for refuge as a refugee from your home country to the United States, then you're considered a refugee. So you're seeking a refugee process, and that is done from your home country. Several countries have those programs in place. But if somebody is either in the United States already, or if somebody's coming to a U.S. Arriving to the United States, then they claim asylum. Okay, and so again, you're seeking the protection of this country because there is a harm. Either there was a physical harm that you sustained, or there was a threat of harm, and you're coming to this country for refuge, for safety. And so and what that means is that if you are granted refugee status or asylee status, then you are allowed to live in the United States, and after the grant of those benefits, then you can apply for permanent residence. So obviously, it's a humanitarian based remedy. And the objective is to provide protection and safety to the applicant.
Perfect. Thank you so much for answering this question. Moving ahead, so we all know President Biden has implemented like several key changes to the U.S. asylum policy, right? Now, these changes actually they represent in our like what we understand is that it's completely a departure from the most restrictive, the changes that needs to be implemented, and aims to restore the US as a place of refuge for those fleeing persecution. So, apart from the policies which you have mentioned in the very beginning, what are the most notable policies which are set in place as of now, and how do you think it might be impacting, or rather, I should say, affecting as well as affecting the upcoming time?
Well, I mean, under the Biden administration, we have seen a number of changes as policy changes as it relates to asylum. So when he took office, he inherited the policies that were created under the Trump administration, which were a lot more strict. I mean, which were stricter than they were before Trump came into office.
Right.
And then so when Biden came into power, there were a number of policies in place, and there was COVID, right? So during the time that COVID was around, the borders shut down. I mean, people seeking asylum were not able to apply, and so I think that created then a system for Biden then to decide, well, do I want to continue these draconian, strict policies, or do I want to relax, these policies as it relates to asylum? So I think that we have seen at the beginning of his presidency, we did see um, some de-escalation, some remedies, some, more opportunities for people to apply to provide them safeguards. But we have also seen the opposite. He is it's people who are coming to the border, in particular the U.S. and Mexican border, continues to be a problem here in the United States, simply because it's a lot of people, and it's it's sort of like a battle between people who have a need to come to this country, but also there are laws, right? And then there's also the political opposition to asylum seekers. So now we are seeing that Biden has tightened his belt, so to speak, and so in June of this year, he did implement measures that are significantly preventing people from applying for asylum, at least, at the southern border where we see the majority of asylum seekers.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this, clear, I would say, the validation and the entire answers that you have provided to this. So, moving on, like the third question that we have in mind is like, how do you see the current backlog of asylum cases affecting the refugee protection in the US?
Well, they're really bad because no, I mean they are. It's not getting better. Again, you have a system where there are more people applying, and it's
Hmm.
already a system that, as it was already stressed. It was under strain, and so if you continue to add more,
Hmm.
it's only going to get worse. And so I think the backlogs are significantly putting people, applicants, refugees, asylum seekers, at a disadvantage because So just to kind of break it down a little bit to just provide this information. So when somebody applies for asylum in the United States, there's what is called affirmative asylum, and there is defensive asylum. So, for example, if I come to the United States and I enter as a tourist, right, and I overstay, or I enter on any type of visa. Or with permission in the United States, I'm in the country, I can apply for affirmative asylum. So if I'm not in detention proceedings, if I haven't been apprehended by immigration when I enter the country, then I can apply for affirmative asylum. So that asylum process is filed with a local United States Immigration Services office. So it's called affirmative because you're taking the first step in seeking it. And so usually what that entails is the case is processed by the asylum office, which is supposed to be like humanitarian office, and there's an interview that is scheduled with an officer who then makes a determination of the application. um, Now, many people who have applied for affirmative asylum are waiting years. I mean, we're talking 4, 5, 6, 7 years to have that
True.
interview.
True.
And so, and many of these applicants may not be granted asylum at the affirmative asylum level. So what happens then, they are then referred to an immigration judge, right? They're formally placed in deportation proceedings. And then when that process initiates, we call it defensive asylum because we are
Mhm.
defending our claim to asylum. And so if the person has spent 7, 8 years waiting for an interview only to be told no, and then you get in this line in, to present your claim to an immigration judge, and is tacking on an additional 3 or 5 years. So it creates uncertainty in the person. Their person is in limbo. They have no status. I mean, there are some interim benefits that the person gets while they're waiting for to present their claim. um, but yeah, I mean, it's not good to have the backlog. It's not good for the applicant. It's not good for this country because it also again is straining the system. um, and another point, Paul, that it's important is a lot of these claims for asylum are, you rely on evidence, right? And so sometimes you have witnesses, right? That if you, for example, are in deportation proceedings in front of an immigration judge, well, you may have witnesses who can attest or verify your claims. But because so much time passes before the person has an opportunity to present their case to a judge, some of these witnesses either die or they disappear, or sometimes we see that the conditions in the home country of the person have changed. And so if you're saying I left my country and I can't go back because someone or something will harm me, and the conditions in that country have changed, then that really dilutes your claim. And so I think that that is another area where I see that the passage of time is a huge problem.
So basically, the applicant is stuck in between.
Stuck in between with no assurance that their claim will be denied,
Right.
um, and if their case is denied, then you then have to say, okay, what do I do now? And so
Yes.
yeah, so it's a very difficult situation for someone to be in.
And you mentioned that the backlog has been incrementing substantially. So is it like post-COVID, or it has been there in the last decade as well?
No, I mean it has. I mean, I can tell you, I can pull some stats that I looked at. So it has been growing. So maybe a couple years ago, it was like 600,000 cases that were in the deportation and the immigration courts. We're seeing that that number has risen to 1 million cases, and so. And so you have these, million plus cases that are pending with in immigration court, and then you also have cases that are pending with the USCIS office, which I think is somewhere around 1 million. So in total, from the data, and of course, this data may not be completely accurate, but we're looking at about 2 million cases, people who are in this limbo place, that may or may not get approved. And I mentioned that asylum law is a very complicated area of law because it is, and also
Mhm.
it's an area of law that it's not inclusive. It's very rigid. So either you're in or you're out, and so it's not a remedy that is very generous. That it's easy for people to get, and um, so a lot of the times, even if you I've met many people with very sad, difficult stories, and I believe that what they went through is awful, but legally it's not recognized as a harm, and it's not recognized as something that the U.S. can protect you, because legally there is a disconnect. And so a lot of these people, present their case and unfortunately doesn't meet the requirements. And then what now? Their case is denied. Then
Understood.
they have a deportation order. So anyway, it just kind of snowballs.
Understood. Understood. Perfect. Perfect. So I believe, the most crucial questions that we actually, thought to have completely highlighted upon and, get answered by you. So those things really happened in a very, very beautiful manner. So, moving on, so this for our audience, whether you are just tuning in or have been with us from the very start, this is immigrationquestion.com's live streaming program. So, immigrationquestion.com is transforming how immigrants connect with experienced and seasoned immigration attorneys. So, ask your questions for free, and we will connect you with the most verified attorney on our platform. We like to call it the meeting place, or you can say, the correlation point, the intersection point for all the immigrants and the attorneys alike. For attorneys, IMQ is your chance to grow your practice significantly. So sign up today and start boosting your firm's growth. Please keep your questions coming in. Our special guest will be answering them now. Okay, so yeah, we have a very, very sincere question that comes from Jyoti. So she's asking, are refugees in urgent situations eligible for expedited processing?
Um, so there are two tools available. One tool is to make a request to expedite your case with U.S. Immigration and Immigration Services Office, and I mean there has to be an emergent, extenuating reason why you're asking them to expedite. So a lot of the times we see this request in the, for example, if somebody is seeking medical treatment in their home country and they have a need to, or not necessarily in their home country, but they need to travel, and so you're asking the office to expedite your claim based on medical reasons. Or for example, if you have derivative family member, right, children or spouses that are in your home country and those people are suffering a harm, then that could be a reason that they expedite your case. It's not a very practical tool because it's not granted very often. And it also is time consuming in the sense, not time consuming, but the time that it takes the agency to respond to the request, it could be a year, it could be 2 years. So it's not a very practical tool. The other tool that it's available is called a mandamus action. So that is when you go to a federal court and you file a lawsuit and you say, USCIS, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, has had my case for 7 years, and they haven't interviewed me. So, due to agency delay, I want you, judge, to compel them to expedite my case. Um, that uh, sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, because the agency sometimes will say, "Well, we have limited resources," and so, but those are two of the most common tools to seek expedite of asylum claims.
Perfect. So, Jyoti, I hope your question has been answered in a very effective manner. The next question that comes from Yulia Gal. So, my brother is currently in Mexico, hoping to seek asylum in the USA. How will these new policies affect his chances?
In June, there were some policy changes that President Biden put into effect I mean, significantly limit migration coming from the southern border. So if somebody is, for example, if somebody's apprehended at the border, or if they turn themselves into border personnel, if they say that they are coming to the United States for, economic opportunity, then those people will be expeditedly removed. So if you're, if so there, unless you have a claim for asylum. So if you fear returning to your home country, then you will be given an opportunity to have an interview with an asylum office. And so and that interview is called the credible fear interview. But under the new mandate as of June, these interviews are a lot more strict. And so again, we go back to this policy that the applicant has to have a very meritorious claim to asylum in order for the officer to then determine if that person is allowed into the country to pursue his asylum claim or not. So the question to your audience, your audience member, is in the terms of the reasons that he is, coming to the United States. It depends also on the type. If it is a fear-based claim, it depends on the type of claim that he has and how meritorious it would be in the eyes of an officer who is being told, "Hey, limit the number of people that you let in." So it's It's probably going to be challenging, but not impossible, of course.
Perfect, perfect. So I guess it's a bit tough thing to cross the Trump wall of Mexico.
It is. It is. It's not easy, for sure.
Perfect, perfect. I hope you got the answer, and thank you so much for answering that in a very effective way again. So we have our next question from Priya. She says, please guide towards the government aids available for the asylum seekers.
Um, okay, so after they're granted asylum, is um,
Um,
okay. Well, we can distinguish. So it depends. Okay, so before the person is granted asylum, if while they're in the process of applying for asylum, um, people from certain countries may have access to certain benefits. Not everybody. So, for example, there were people that were coming from Ukraine or people that were, defecting from Russia. There were some benefits that were being given to people of that region upon their arrival to the United States. Um, uh, and again, it's country specific, and I don't know what all the countries, get that, or if they still do. But for somebody who's applying for asylum, if they have an asylum application lodged with the system, if the application has been pending for at least 6 months, and that person is eligible to apply for an employment authorization document, which allows them to work, is a work authorization document that allows a person to work. Um, Once that, if their application for asylum is granted, then that person then becomes eligible for certain public benefits. They become employment authorized, and a year after the grant of asylum, they can then apply for permanent residence in the United States.
Perfect, perfect. Jyoti, I hope your question has been answered again. The fourth question that comes from Kaldima Hina. So, are there any new opportunities or trends that may benefit asylum seekers?
Opportunities or trends?
Seems tough.
Well, I mean, again, as far as opportunities in terms of being access to the country, I don't see that getting better for asylum seekers. I mean, we are in an election year. We do know that the two parties in this country have very different positions when it comes to immigration. So I think that under a Harris administration, we may be able to see maybe more humanitarian approaches to
Mm-hmm.
immigration policies at the, as it refers to asylum seekers. If Trump, takes power again, I think we can probably see that his policies probably will not be opportunities. I would probably see it more as restrictive.
Perfect, perfect. So, nevertheless, opportunities are always there. You just need to understand, I guess, like what suits you the best and which government gives you the best of the aid.
Exactly, exactly. I guess opportunities could be good opportunity. Yes, you're right, Paul.
Perfect, perfect. Uh, Next question comes from Chidinma. So she is asking, while an asylum is pending, what rights and privileges are available to one who is already in the USA?
So generally, if you have an asylum application pending, whether is affirmatively with the immigration service or defensively with an immigration judge, you are it doesn't confer any legal status, but you have permission to remain in the United States to fight to request asylum. So you do have permission to be here if if somebody was ever in that position, was ever to get pulled over by an or have an encounter with an immigration official who wants to deport them from the country. And if the person says, no, I filed an asylum application, I have my case pending, then that government actor shouldn't take action to deport the person, because you have a claim. We in the United States give protections to people who have, to give them the ability to have a day in court. And so that is something that is protected here. Now, once, if your case is denied, obviously you're not in that position anymore. And so you don't have that right anymore. As far as privileges, like I mentioned, a work permit is usually granted for a period of 5 years while the asylum application is in process. Also, by having a work permit, you can get a social security number, which is a very important tool in the United States, which you need for employment, IRS, fiscal, tax issues,
Right.
and also a driver's license. I mean, so in the United States, there are 50 states, and each state determines what the rules are as far as being eligible to obtain a driver's license. And most of the states in this country do not grant driver's license to people who are here unlawfully. So one of the benefits of having a pending asylum application, which then confers a eligibility for a work permit, is that when you have your work permit, you can then go and apply for a driver's license, and so it'll be granted to you. So that's a huge benefit for many people in that situation, being able to obtain a driver's license.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, lovely. We got to know a lot more. And so, moving to the last, a couple of questions that we would love to know from you. So, the first thing is like, I would like to ask Tony Leslie, what do you think of a platform like immigrationquestion.com?
What do I think about it?
Yes.
I think I think it's a great platform to bring people from everywhere, right? I imagine that a lot of your audience members are located not only here in the United States, but probably worldwide.
Of
So I think
course.
it's a great forum to have access to information from somebody that knows. I think the one of the problems, at least that I see in my field, that people can believe that because the information is on the internet that they become experts in immigration law. And so I think that it's an effective tool to have a platform in which you can ask questions of people who are, you know uh, licensed to practice in the area.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Last but not the least, so what advice would you give to someone currently who is seeking asylum in the U.S. Canadian border and, I mean, looking into what kind of situation or the scenario that is going on?
I would tell them to be prepared, and because you get one shot, one chance to present your claim. And so I think preparation goes a long way. Um, I think that also, being truthful. I also see sometimes that people sometimes are not truthful, and some incredibility is important in these cases. um, and I think also it would be helpful, for somebody in that situation to maybe consult a lawyer, become acquainted as to what are the legal requirements. What group are you going to fall in? Are you fleeing because of your political opinion? Are you fleeing because you're a victim of domestic violence? Are you fleeing because of your religious beliefs? Are you fleeing because you are homosexual? So I think that you have to be ready to articulate, because it is a more hostile or strict environment in which the person is going to be presenting their claim.
Understanding your own situation first would be the first hand call to go ahead and present yourself. So that gives you a, I would say, an upper hand to present yourself in a better way.
Correct.
Perfect. Makes sense. Perfect. So, as we all know, it's a time-bound thing. So, apologies, certain sincere apologies from my end, from our entire platform, if we could not take, further more questions on our website as of now. But please keep your questions and please do, keep posting your questions on the social media platform so that we can take them. And in case everything is, I mean, something that you are looking forward to get connected with, please do let us know so that we can get you connected to the most seasoned attorneys, just like Attorney Leslie, who would be, as for, I believe that you'd be, having a good time to go ahead and assist them. Correct? Perfect. Perfect. That would be all. So before we wrap up, I sincerely want to thank our guest speaker for sharing her insights and expertise. And we can't wait to have you back, Attorney
All right.
Leslie. And thank
Thank
you, all our audience, for your participation and your thoughtful questions. Thank you for attending our webinar today. We hope this discussion has shed light on the complex issue of asylum policy changes and their impact on the refugee protection. So we encourage you to stay informed, stay engaged on any such critical topics. And we are here for you. So drop in your questions. We would love to answer them, get you connected to the best of the attorneys who can assist you and help you in the best of the manner. We hope to see all of you at our next session, same time next Friday, as we touch base on the topic understanding of EB3 and EB5 visa cap limits, which is the next action for future applicants. So we will be joining by attorney Asma Onal, a refined US immigration attorney who is ready to share her expertise with us. Until then, stay informed, empowered in your immigration journey. Have a good day. And thank you so much, Attorney Leslie. It was
All
lovely having you here. Bye bye.
right. Bye